Book 4 is kind of big, so I'm going to split it up into two parts. This is part 1 of Book 4, the red-haired king and... what is it? The red-haired king and his lady. That's the book. By vales and sharp ravines in Lake Damon, the travelers drove to Menelaos' mansion and found him at a double wedding feast for son and daughter. Long ago at Troy, he pledged her to the heir of great Achilles, breaker of men, a match the gods had ripened. So he must send her with a chariot train to the town and glory of the Myrmidons. And that day, too, he brought Alector's daughter to marry his Tolskian, Megapenthes, born of a slave girl during the Long War. For the gods had never after granted Helen a child to bring into the sunlit world after the first rose-lipped Hermione, a girl like the pale goddess Aphrodite. Down the great hall in happiness they feasted, neighbors of Menelaos and his kin, for whom a holy minstrel harped and sang, and two lithe tumblers moved out on the song with spins and headsprings through the company. Now when Telemachus and Nestor's son pulled up their horses at the main gate, one of the king's companions in arms, Astonius, going inside, caught sight of them. He turned and passed through court and hall to tell the master stepping up close to get his ear. So basically what's going on right now, Telemachus showing up, and it's just described some stuff about how his sons and daughters, he pledged his daughter to the heir of great Achilles. And he brought Alector's daughter. I don't know who Alector is, but he brought him to marry his tall skian. I don't know what a skian is. Let's look that up, everybody. It's a car make. Look up Greek mythology. Skyron. That's not what it says at all. Skyron. That's not right. I don't know what a skin is, or skyon. Whatever that means. And he is marrying him to a slave girl, or someone born of a slave girl. All right. And some guy, he caught sight of Telemachus arriving, and then he's going to tell the master. Said he, 2 men are here, 2 strangers, Menelaos, but nobly born Achaeans they appear. What do you say? Shall we unhitch their team, or send them on to someone free to receive them? So basically what happened is they're crashing a wedding. They're crashing this feast. They just arrive in the middle of it, and this guy's like, can we just kick them out? Of course they don't. The red-haired captain answered him in anger. You were no idiot before, Astonius, but here you are talking like a child of 10. Could we have made it home again, and Zeus give us no more hard roving, if other men had never fed us, given us lodging? So bring these men to be our guests. Unhitch their team. So this guy is like, should we kick him out? And Menelaos is like, shut up, man. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. So Astonius left the long room like an arrow, calling equerries after him on the run. Outside, they freed the sweating team from harness, stabled the horses, tied them up, and showered bushels of wheat and barley in the feed box. Then leaned the chariot pole against the gleaming entry wall of stone, and took the guests in. What a brilliant place that mansion of the great prince seemed to them, a glitter everywhere, as though with fiery points of sunlight, lusters of the moon. The young men gazed in joy before they entered into a room of polished tubs to bathe. Maidservants gave them baths, anointed them, held out fresh tunics, cloaked them warm, and soon they took tall thrones beside the son of Atreus. Here a maid tipped out water for their hands from a gold pitcher into a silver bowl, and set a polished table near at hand. The larder mistress with her tray of loaves and savories came, dispensing all her best, and then a carver came, heaped their platters high with various meats, and put down cups of gold. And so basically they come in, they bathe them, they give them new clothes, and they're sitting on a throne and they're getting babied, you know? They're like babies. Now said the red-haired captain, Menelaus, gesturing, "Welcome, and fall too, in time. When you have supped, we hope to hear your names. Forebears and families, in your case, it seems. No anonymities, but lordly men. Lads like yourselves are not base-born." So basically, he's like, introduce yourself once you're done eating. And I mean, like, you seem like kings, so I mean, like, you guys are pretty cool guys. At this, he lifted in his own hands the king's portion, a chine of beef, and set it down before them. Seeing already then, they took their dinner, but when they had feasted well, Telemachus could not keep still, but whispered, his head bent close so the others might not hear. "My dear friend, can you believe your eyes? The murmuring hall, now how luminous it is, with bronze, gold, amber, silver, and ivory. This is the way the court of Zeus must be, inside, upon Olympos. What a wonder." So basically, they're just like, this is a pretty cool place you got here. But splendid Menelaus had overheard him and spoke out on the instant to both of them. "Young friends, no mortal man can vie with Zeus. His home and all his treasures are forever. But as for men, it may well be that few have more than I. How painfully I wandered before I brought it home. 7 years at sea, Kypros, Phoenicia, Egypt, and still farther among the sunburnt races." And this is what it meant at the beginning of it. The sunburnt races, I guess, is Egypt, like Africa. That's what that means. Or like Middle East. I saw the men of Sidon and Arabia, and Libya too, where lambs are horned at birth. And every year they have 3 lambing seasons, so no man, chief or shepherd, ever goes hungry for want of mutton, cheese, or milk. All year at milking time there are fresh ewes. But while I made my fortune on those travels, a stranger killed my brother in cold blood, tricked blind, caught in the web of his deadly queen. What pleasure can I take, then, being lord over these costly things? You must have heard your fathers tell my story. Whoever your fathers are, you must know of my life, the anguish I once had, and the great house full of my treasure left in desolation. How gladly I should live 1/3 as rich to have my friend back safe at home. My friends who died on Troy's wide seaboard, far from the grazing lands of Argos. But as things are, nothing but grief is left me. Sometimes is left me for those companions. While I sit at home, sometimes hot tears come, and I revel in them. Or stop before the surfeit makes me shiver. And there is one I miss more than the other, that I mourn for. Sleep and food alike, how grateful when I think of him. No soldier took on so much, went through so much as Odysseus. That seems to have been his destiny, and this mine. To feel each day the emptiness of his absence, ignorant even, whether he lived or died. How his old father and his quiet wife Penelope must miss him still. Telemachus, whom he left as a newborn child. And so this guy's like, I'm so sad. Everyone died. I'd rather be poor. I have all these riches. I went to like Egypt and stuff. I had a great time, but my brother died, dude. Now, hearing also he mentions Telemachus, which is ironic because Telemachus is right there. How hearing these things said, the boy's heart rose in a long pang for his father, and he wept, holding his parental mantle with both hands before his eyes. Menelaus knew him now, and so fell silent, with uncertainty whether to let him speak and name his father in his own time, or to inquire and prompt him? And while he pondered, Helen came out of her scented chamber, a moving grace like Artemis, straight as a shaft of gold. Beside her came Adraste, who to place her armchair, a clippy with a rug of downy wool, and Philo bringing a silver basket, once given by Alcindre, the wife of Polybus in the treasure city, Thebes of distant Egypt. He gave 2 silver bathtubs to Menelaus and a pair of tripods with 10 pure gold bars. And she then made these beautiful gifts to Helen, a golden distaff and the silver basket rimmed in a hammered gold with wheels to run on. So Philo rolled it in to stand behind her, heaped with fine spun stuff, and cradled on it the distaff swashed in dusky violet wool, reclining in her light chair with its footrest. And so Telemachus, he's crying. He's like, ooh, and Menelaus is like, should I ask him about Odysseus? I kind of know who he is. But then this Helen girl comes in and she's like, ooh, set out my armchairs, mates. And she's like, they do all this stuff. They put in gold. Like she had a bunch of gold stuff. Helen gazed at her husband and demanded, Menelaus, my lord, have we yet heard our new guests introduce themselves? Shall I dissemble what I feel? No, I must say it. Never anywhere have I seen so great a likeness in a man or woman. But it is truly strange. This boy must be the son of Odysseus, Telemachus, the child he left at home the year that Achaean host made war on Troy, daring all for the wanton that I was. And the red-haired Captain Menelaus answered, my dear, I see the likeness as well as you do. Odysseus' hands and feet were like this boy's, his head and hair, and with the glinting of his eyes. Not only that, but when I spoke just now of Odysseus' years of toil on my behalf and all he had to endure, the boy broke down and wept into his cloak. So they're like, oh, it's Odysseus. Why are you? So Helen's is like, gosh, hurry up. And she's like, oh, that's Odysseus' son. And Menelaus is like, yeah, it's Odysseus' son. No, Nestor's son, Pisistratos. This agony has gone on for too long. Too long have I dealt with not being able to pronounce this word. Pronounce.
Pisistratus.
Pisistratus spoke up in answer to him. My lord Marshal Menelaus, son of Atreus, this is that hero's son, as you surmise, but he is gentle and would be ashamed to clamor for attention before your grace, whose words have been so moving to us both. Nestor, lord of Gerenia, sent me with him as guide and escort. He had wished to see you, to be advised by you or assisted somehow. A farther far from home means difficulty for an only son, with no one else to help him. So with Telemachus, his father left the house without defenders. So this guy is like, oh, I'm sorry, we've been rude. It's Telemachus, whatever. I'm from Nestor. I'm Nestor's kid. Oh, I'm better than Telemachus. The king with flaming hair now spoke again. His son in my house? How I love the man, and how he fought through hardship for my sake. I swore I'd cherish him above all others, if Zeus, who views the wide world, gave us passage homeward across the sea in the fast ships. I would have settled him in Argos, brought him over with herds and household out of Ithaca, his child and all his people. I could have cleaned out one of my towns to be his new domain. And so we might have been together often in feasts and entertainments, never parted till the dark mist of death lapped over one of us. But God himself must have been envious to batter the bruised man so that he alone should fail in his return. So he basically like, oh, it could have been so great, man. Your dad's a great guy. I love the guy. We could have had a good time and like stayed together until one of us, got stabbed or whatever. But like God has something out for us, man. A twinging ache of grief rose upon everyone. And Helen of Argos wept. The daughter of Zeus, Telemachus, and Menelaus wept. And tears came to the eyes of Nestor's son, remembering for his part Antilochus, whom the son of shining dawn had killed in battle. But thinking of that brother, he broke out, "O son of Atreus, when we spoke of you at home and asked about you, my old father would say you have the clearest mind of all. If it is not too much to ask, then let us not weep away these hours after supper. I feel we should not. Dawn will soon be here. You understand. I would not grudge a man right mourning when he comes to death and doom. What else can one bestow on the poor dead? A lock of hair sheared and a tear let fall. For that matter, I too lost someone in the war at Troy. My brother, an no mean soldier, whom you must have known, although I never did, Antilochus. He ranked high as a runner and a fighter man." And so basically he's like, "Oh, I'm so sad, like we should have waited supper. Why don't we just talk about him, like instead of just crying, tell me about him." And so the red-haired Captain Menelaus answered, "My lad, what you have said is only sensible, and you did well to speak. Yes, that was worthy a wise man and an older man than you are. You speak for all the world like Nestor's." Why do they go so long talking about how they speak? How easily one can tell the man whose father had true felicity, marrying and begetting. And that was true of Nestor all of his days, down to his sleek old age and peace at home, with clever sons, good spearmen into the bargain. Come, we'll shake off this morning mood of ours and think of supper. Let the men at arms rinse our hands again. There will be time for a long talk with Telemachus in the morning. Morning mood? Morning mood? That's a Grieg song. I don't know how to spell Grieg. Edward Grieg. This song. Oh yes. Some people call it morning mood. Some people just call it morning. Okay, anyway, that was a little off topic. The hero Menelaus' companion in arms, Ashpalion, poured water for their hands, and once again they touched the food before. That's kind of gross how they wipe their hands in water and then like with their soggy hands picked at their food. But now it entered Helen's mind to drop into the wine that they were drinking. An anodyne, mild magic of forgetfulness. Whoever drank this mixture in the wine bowl would be incapable of tears that day, though he should lose mother and father both, or see with his own eyes a son or brother mauled by weapons of bronze at his own gate. The opiate of Zeus's daughter bore this canny power, and had been supplied her by Polydamna, mistress of Lord Thone, in Egypt, where the rich plantations grow herbs of all kinds, maleficent and healthful. And no one else knows medicines as they do. Egyptian heirs of Pion, the healing god. This is just so rambly. There's so many unnecessary details. She drugged the wine, then had it served and said, taking again her part in the conversation. And so there's this special wine that she has that makes you not be able to cry and kind of makes you forget. However, it has a side effect that that they have to witness like their brother getting mauled by weapons or see their like parents die or something. Like some bad side effects, Probably shouldn't use this wine. Oh, Menelaus, Atreus' royals. Oh my God, why does everyone refer to their fathers? Atreus' royal son, and you that are great hero sons, you know how Zeus gives all of us in turn good luck and bad luck, being all powerful. So take refreshment, take your ease and all, and cheer the time with stories. I'll begin. Not that I think of naming, far less telling every feat that rugged man, Odysseus, but here is something that he dared to do at Troy, where you Achaeans endured the war. He had first given himself an outrageous beating and thrown some rags on, like a household slave, then slipped into that city of wide lanes among his enemies. So changed he looked, as never before upon the Achaean beachhead, but like a beggar, merged in the townspeople. And no one there remarked him, but I knew him. Even as he was, I knew him, and questioned him. How shrewdly he put me off. But in the end I bathed him and anointed him, and put a fresh cloak around him, and swore an oath not to give him away as Odysseus to the Trojans, until he got back to camp where the long ships lay. He spoke up then and told me all about the Achaeans and their plans, then sorted many Trojan through the body on his way out with what he learned of theirs. The Trojan women raised a cry, but my heart sang, for I had come round long before to dreams of sailing home, and I repented that mad day Aphrodite drew me away from my dear fatherland, forsaking all, child, bridal bed, and husband, a man without defect in form or mind. So, this person's like, let's talk about the good stuff. Stop crying, you big dummies. Let's talk about the good stuff. You know, Odysseus, one time, he dressed up as a beggar, and he went in and he infiltrated their base, and he just swooped right in, completely destroyed them. But I recognized him. I gave him a bath, like as you do, you give your best friend a bath, and then after that, I was like, yeah, no, handy doo. He went on his merry way. Replied the red-haired Captain Menelaus. An excellent tale, my dear, and most becoming. In my life I have met in many countries foresight and wit in many first-rate men. But never have I seen one like Odysseus for steadiness and a stout heart. Here, for instance, is what he did. He had the cold nerve to do inside the hollow horse where we were waiting. Picked men, all of us, for the Trojan slaughter. When all of a sudden you came by, I dare say drawn by some superhuman power that planned an exploit for the Trojans, and Deiphobos, that handsome man, came with you. 3 times you walked around it, patting it everywhere, and called by name the flower of our fighters, making your voice sound like their wives, calling Diomedes. And I crouched in the center along with Odysseus. We could hear you plainly. Listening, we too were swept by waves of longing to reply or go. Odysseus fought us down, despite our craving, and all the Achaeans kept their lips shut tight. But all but Anticlus. Desire moved his throat to hail you, but Odysseus's great hands clamped over his jaw and held. So he saved us all, till Pallas Athena led you away at last. And so he's like, oh, you were patting us down. You were mimicking our wives. We were like, oh, we want to talk to you. But Odysseus, he was like, nah, guys, shut up. Don't answer. And then this one guy was like, oh, I'm gonna say it. Odysseus was like, he stopped him from talking. It was really great. Saved their lives. Then clear-headed Telemachus addressed him, my lord Marshal Menelaus, son of Atreus. All the more pity, since these valors could not defend him from annihilation, not if his heart were iron in his breast. But will you not dismiss us for the night now? Sweet sleep will be a pleasure, drifting over us. He said no more, but Helen called the maids and sent them to make beds, with purple rugs piled up, and sheets outspread, and fleecy coverlets in the porch inside the gate. The girls went out with torches in their hands, and presently a squire led the guests, Telemachus and Nestor's radiant son, under the entrance colonnade to bed. Then deep in the great mansion in his chamber, Menelaus went to rest, and Helen, queenly in her long gown, lay beside him. And so they're all going to bed. They're like, ooh, ooh, they're super tired. They want to get some rest. And so they all did get some rest. I don't understand what's so complicated about this. When the young dawn, with fingertips of rose, made heaven bright, the deep-lunged man of battle stood up, pulled on his tunic and his mantle, slung on a sword belt and a new-edged sword, tied his smooth feet into fine rawhide sandals, and left his room, a god's brilliance upon him. He sat down by Telemachus, asking gently, Telemachus, why did you come, sir, riding the sea's broad back to reach old Lake Damon? A public errand or private? Why, precisely? And so when people woke up, that's the same joke over and over again. It's more where that came from, folks. I'll be here all night. So he interrogated Telemachus. He's like, why are you here? Like, what's the purpose of coming here? Come on, tell me, Telemachus. And Telemachus replied, my lord Menelaus, son of Atreus, I come to hear what news you had of father. My house, my good estates are being ruined. Each day my mother's bullying suitors come to slaughter flocks of mine, and my black cattle. Enemies crowd her home, and this is why I come to you for news of him who owned it. Tell me of his death, sir, if perhaps you witnessed it, or have heard some wanderer tell the tale. Copy-paste. The man was born for trouble. Spare me no part for kindness' sake. Be harsh. But put the scene before me as you sought. If ever Odysseus, my noble father, served you by promise, kept or work accomplished in the land of Troy, where you Achaeans suffered, recall those things for me the way they were. That's a copy and paste from what they said from Nestor, but basically what he's saying, tell me about his death. The suitors suck. I hate the suitors. Tell me about my dad's death. And so, stirred now to anger, Menelaus said, intolerable, that soft men, as those are, should think to lie in that great captain's bed, fawns in a lion's lair. Fawns in a lion's lair, as if a doe put down her litter of sucklings there, while she quested a glen or cropped some grassy hollow. Ha! Then the Lord returns to his own bed and deals out wretched doom on both alike. So will Odysseus deal out doom on these? O Father Zeus, Athena, and Apollo! I pray he comes as once he was in Lesbos, when he stood up to wrestle Philomeleides, champion and island king, and smashed him down. Oh, how the Achaeans cheered! They'd have their consumption, a cold bed. Now for your questions, let me come to the point. I would not misreport it for you. Let me tell you what the ancient of the sea, who is infallible, said to me. Every word. So basically he's like, ugh, I hate the suitors. The suitors suck. Really, you suitors? And then he's like, oh, I'm going to tell you, but I mean, I hope he comes back and like stabs them in the back. Like Odysseus slams through the doors, shoots all of them. Best times. During my first try at a passage homeward, the gods detained me, tied me down to Egypt, for I had been too scant in hecatombs. And gods will have the rules each time remembered. There is an island washed by the open sea, lying off Nile mouth. Seamen call it Pharos. Distance a day's sail in clean hull, with a brisk land breeze behind. It was a harbor, sheltered bay, where shipmasters take on dark water for the outward voyage. Here the gods held me 20 days becalmed. No winds came up, seaward escorting winds, for ships that ride the sea's broad back. And so my stores and men were used up. We were failing, had not one goddess intervened in pity. Idothea, daughter of Proteus, the ancient of the sea, how I distressed her. I had been walking out alone that day. My sailors, thin-bellied from the long fast, were off with fishhooks, angling on the shore. Then she appeared to me, and her voice sang, what fool is here? What drooping dunce of dreams? Or can it be, friend, that you love to suffer? How can you linger on this island, aimless and shiftless, while you people waste away? Basically what he said, okay, basically I was in Egypt and I was like kind of lacking on my sacrifices, kind of slacking a little bit. And so the gods like tied me down, dude. It was crazy. I was stuck in Egypt. So one of the gods, they were like, oh, what's going on, man? Why don't you get up? Why don't you go help your people, man? What's wrong with you? But, he was tied down. So you know what he's going to say? To this I quickly answered, tell me, Let me tell you, goddess, whatever goddess you may be, these doldrums are no will of mine. I take it the gods who own broad heaven are offended. Why don't you tell me, since the gods know everything, who has pinned me down here? How am I going to make my voyage home? So he's like, oh, shut up, goddess. You don't know anything. Who are you? And who's tying me down? Who's keeping me here? It's not you. Why are you complaining? I didn't have anything to do with this. Now she replied in her immortal beauty. I'll put it for you clearly as may be, friend. The ancient of the salt sea haunts this place, immortal Proteus of Egypt. All the deeps are known to him. He serves under Poseidon, and is, they say, my father. If you could take him by surprise and hold him, he'd give you course and distance for your sailing homeward across the cold fish-breeding sea. And should you wish it, noble friend, he'd tell you that all of that occurred at home, both good and evil, while you were gone so long and hard a journey. So basically he said, just like, I'm gonna find out. To this, I said, but you must tell me how I can trap this venerable sea god. He will elude me if he takes alarm. No man, God knows, can quell a god with ease. So basically, he's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you're not helping. Your dad's kind of a bad person. Her dad's Poseidon, by the way. Like, and said, and is, they say, my father. Oh, sorry. No, it's not Poseidon. It's a god that serves under Poseidon. And that person is her father. Yeah. And she's like, I'm gonna... The fairest of unearthly nymphs replied, I'll tell you this, too clearly as may be. When the sun hangs at high noon in heaven, the ancient glides ashore under the west wind, hidden by shivering glooms on the clear water, and rests in caverns hollowed by the sea. Their flippered seals, brine children, shining come from silvery foam on crowds to lie around him, exhaling rankness from the deep sea floor. Tomorrow dawn I'll take you to those caves, and bed you down there. Choose 3 officers for company. Brave men they had better be. The old one has strange powers, I must tell you. He goes amid the seals to check their number, and when he sees them all, and counts them all, he lies down like a shepherd with his flock. Here's your opportunity. At this point, gather yourselves with all your heart and strength, and tackle him before he bursts away. He'll make you fight, for he can take the forms of all the beasts, and water, and blinding fire. But you must hold on, even so, and crush him until he breaks the silence. When he does, he will be in the shape you saw asleep. Relax your grip, then. Set the ancient free, and put your questions, hero. Who is the god so hostile to you? And how will you go home on the fish-cold sea? So basically, she's saying, okay, this is the time. You freaking demolish him, crush him, dude. How about you tell me? At this, she dove under a swell and left me. Back to the ships in the sandy cove I went, my heart within me like a high surf running. But there I joined my men once more at supper as the sacred night came on, and slept at last beside the lapping water. When Dodd spread out her fingertips of rose, I started by the sea's wide level ways, praying the gods for help, and took along 3 lads I counted in on any fight. Meanwhile, the Nereid swam from the lap of the ocean, laden with 4 sealskins, new flayed for the hoax she thought of playing on her father. In the sand she scooped out hollows for our bodies, and sat down waiting. We came close to touch her, and betting us, she threw us the sealskins over us. A strong disguise. Oh yes, terribly strong, as I recall the stench of those damned seals. Would any man lie snug with the sea monster? But here the nymph again came to her rescue, dabbing ambrosia under each man's nose, a perfume drowning out the bestial odor. So there we lay with beating hearts all morning, while seals came shoreward out of ripples, jolting to take their places, flopping on the sand. At noon the ancient issued from the sea, and held inspection, counting off the sea beasts. We were the first he numbered. He went by, detected nothing. When at last he slept, we gave a battle cry and plunged for him, locking our hands behind him. But the old one's tricks were knocked out of him. Far from it. First he took on a whiskered lion shape, a serpent, then a leopard, a great boar, then sousing water, then a tall green tree. Still we hung on, by hook or crook, through everything, until the ancient saw defeat and grimly opened his lips to ask me, "Son of Atreus, who counseled you to do this? A god? What god? Set a trap for me, overpower me? Why?" He bit it off then, and I answered, "Old one, you know the reason. Why feign not to know? High and dry so long upon this island, I'm at my wit's end, and my heart is sore. You gods know everything. Now you can tell me, which of the immortals chained me here, and how will I get home on the fish-cold sea?" So basically, actually, this guy wasn't actually keeping him there. He just needed to overpower this guy. Like, he needed to disguise himself and overpower this shape-shifting person to figure out who's actually keeping him there. He made reply at once. "You should have paid honor to Zeus and the other gods, performing a proper sacrifice before embarking. That was your short way home on the wine-dark sea. You may not see your friends, your own fine house, or enter your own land again, unless you first remount the Nile and flood, and pay your hecatomb to the gods of heaven. Then only will the gods grant you passage you desire." So basically, he's like, "Oh, dude, you're like slacking on your sacrifices, man. Just do your hecatomb, kill some oxen." You know what I'm saying? How my heart sank hearing this, hearing him send me back on the cloudy sea, in my own track, the long, hard way of Egypt. Nevertheless, I answered him and said, "Ancient, I shall do as you command, but tell me now, the others, had they a safe return, all those Achaeans who stayed behind when Nestor and I left Troy? Or were there any lost at sea? What bitterness? And who died in camp after the war?" To this he said, "For you to know these things goes beyond all necessity, Menelaus. Why must you ask? You should not know my mind, and you will grieve to learn it, I can tell you. Many there were who died, many remain, but 2 high officers alone were lost, on the passage home, I mean. You saw the ward. One is alive, a castaway at sea. The other, ice, perished with all hands. Through first Poseidon landed him on Gyrae, promontory, and saved him from the ocean. Despite Athena's hate, he had lived on, but the great sinner in his insolence yelled that the gods' will and the sea were beaten, and this loud brag came to Poseidon's ears. He swung the trident in his massive hands, and in one shock from top to bottom split that promontory, toppling into the sea, the fragment where the great fool sat. So the vast ocean had its will with ice, drunk in the end on the salt spume as he drowned. Meanwhile, your brother left that doom astern. In his decked ships, Lady Hera saved him. But as he came around Malea, a fresh squall caught him, bearing him away over the cold sea, groaning in disgust, to the land's end of Argos, where Thyestes lived on the days of old. And then his son, Aegisthus. Now again, return seemed easy. The high gods wound the wind into the east, and back he sailed, this time to his own coast. He went ashore and kissed the earth in joy, hot tears blinding his eyes at the sight of home. But there were eyes that watched him from a height, a lookout, paid 2 bars of gold to keep vigil the year round for Aegisthus' sakes, that he would be forewarned, and Agamemnon's furious valor sleep unroused. Now this man with his news ran to the tyrant, who made his crooked arrangements in a flash, stationed picked man-at-arms, a score of men in hiding, set a feast in the next room. Then he went out with chariots and horses to hail the king and welcome him to evil. He led him to a banquet, all serene, and killed him, like an ox fell at the trough. And not a man of either company survived that ambush in Aegisthus' house. So basically, what he just said, took a long time to read that paragraph. He's like, "Menelaus, why do you want to know who died? Well, I'll tell you anyway. He was kind of mean, so Poseidon's like, no, killed him. He's like, he's dead now. Agamemnon, he was like, I love you, land. I love you, land. Ugh, I love being on land." And then he was brought into a feast, and then it just this, stabbed him. All right, anyway, that's going to be the end of... yeah, that's the end of part 1. I don't have that much left for part 2, so that's good. What happened in this chapter? Telemachus, he went to he went to the good old Menelaus's kingdom, and they're like, Odysseus is nice to meet you. Okay, let's eat, let's weep, let's go have a rest. Okay, what do you? When they wake up, they're like, okay. Why are you here? And he's like, tell me about my dad. And he's like, okay, I'll tell you everything. And then he went on a rambling story about how he got stranded in Egypt. He had to tackle this shape-shifting sea god and like overpower him to figure out how he could get out. And the sea god also told him all about these other people and where they went. And so that's that. That's that one. That's that part of the chapter. I'll do the next part of the chapter, like, not today, obviously, but like tomorrow, I guess. And also book 5. Yeah.